We're bringing all the troops in tonight on Flashpoint down at the America Stand studio. Greg Stevens, thank you, sir, for joining tonight.
Thank you.
From across town in a bunker somewhere in Keller, Texas, is our friend Lance Wallnau. Thank you, Lance. Thank you for being here tonight. And our special guest for the first half hour, our good friend, our new good friend, Jovan Pulitzer. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
All right, so gentlemen, I want to start with a statement that was released by, I saw this on Ted Cruz's website. This is from Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, James Lankford, Steve Daines, John Kennedy, Louisiana, Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee, and Mike Braun, Indiana, and Senators-elect Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, Roger Marshall from Kansas, Bill Haggerty from Tennessee, Tommy Tuberville, Alabama, issued the following statement in advance of Electoral College certification process on January 6, 2021. Now, this is going to lead into our discussion about voting machines and votes and the whole election process. So listen to this is just one piece of news that you need to hear. It's important enough I wanted to read it to you tonight. All right, so here it is. America is a republic whose leaders are chosen in democratic elections. Those elections, in turn, must comply with the Constitution and with federal and state law. When the voters fairly decide an election pursuant to the rule of law, the losing candidate should acknowledge and respect the legitimacy of that election. And if the voters choose to elect a new office holder, our nation should have a peaceful transfer of power. The election of 2020, like the election of 2016, was hard fought and in many swing states narrowly decided. The 2020 election, however, featured unprecedented allegations of voter fraud, violations, and lax enforcement of election law. We're going to talk about that later, and other voting irregularities. Voter fraud has posed a persistent challenge in our elections, although its breadth and scope are disputed. By any measure, the allegations of fraud and irregularities in the 2020 election exceed any in our lifetimes. And those allegations are not believed by just one individual candidate. Instead, they're widespread. Reuters polling tragically shows that 39% of Americans believe the election was rigged. That belief is held by 67% of Republicans, 17% of Democrats, and 31% of independents. Some members of Congress disagree with that assessment, as do many members of the media. I know that's a big shock. But whether or not our elected officials or journalists believe it, that deep distrust of our democratic process will not just magically disappear, it should concern us all. And it poses an ongoing threat to the legitimacy of any subsequent administration. Ideally, the courts would have heard evidence and resolved these claims of serious election fraud. Twice, the Supreme Court had the opportunity to do so, and twice the court declined. On January 6, it is incumbent on Congress to vote on whether to certify the 2020 election results. That vote is the lone constitutional power remaining to consider and force resolution of the multiple allegations of serious voter fraud. At that quadrennial joint session, there's a long precedent of Democratic members of Congress raising objections to presidential election results, as they did in 1969, 2001, 2005, and 2017. And in both 1969 and 2005, a Democratic senator joined with a Democratic House member in forcing votes in both houses on whether to accept the presidential electors being challenged. The most direct precedent on this question arose in 1877, following serious allegations of fraud and illegal conduct in the Hayes-Tilden presidential race. Specifically, the elections in 3 states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, were alleged to have been conducted. Simply dismissed those raising them as radicals trying to undermine democracy. Instead, Congress appointed an electoral commission consisting of 5 senators, 5 House members, and 5 Supreme Court justices to consider, resolve the disputed returns. We should follow that precedent. To wit, Congress should immediately appoint an electoral commission with full investigatory and fact-finding authority to conduct an emergency 10-day audit of the election returns in the disputed states. Once completed, individual states would evaluate the commission's findings and could convene a special legislative session to certify a change in their vote if needed. Accordingly, we intend to vote on January 6 to reject the electors from disputed states as not regularly given and lawfully certified, the statutory requisite, unless and until that emergency 10-day audit is completed. We are not naive. We fully expect most, if not all, Democrats and perhaps more than a few Republicans to vote otherwise. But support of election integrity should not be a partisan issue. A fair and credible audit conducted expeditiously and completed well before January 20th would dramatically improve Americans' faith in our electoral process and would significantly enhance the legitimacy of whoever becomes our next president. We owe that to the people. These are matters worthy of the Congress and entrusted to us to defend. We do not take this action lightly. We are acting not to thwart the democratic process, but rather to protect it. And every one of us should act together to ensure that the election was lawfully conducted under the Constitution and to do everything we can to restore faith in our democracy. And that's the end of the statement. So I want to start with you, Lance Wallnau. What do you think of Ted Cruz and company's statement?
Well, let's face it. I mean, this is an answer to prayer, right? I'm surprised that there's only 11, as of the last count that I found, senators, considering that 35% of those votes that these Republicans get are evangelical votes. But we've got 11, and that's good. What Ted is doing is he is rising to do the Hail Mary. He's pushing for that extension of time. What we're praying for as believers is for mercy, and that mercy really shows up if we're able to prevail with this extension of time. Then we have to make the argument on a national platform of the real reality of what happened with this election, because that left-dominated media has its own power, and it has to be broken during this critical week.
Yeah, absolutely. Pastor Greg, I want to bring you into this. You've been a member of the media, as you are again now, as well as ran for representatives there in California. I mean, what role really, Greg, does the media play in all of this?
Well, right now they're supposed to be the impartial referee, if they will, but they didn't. They've gotten into the game, and they censor certain stories, and they've pushed other stories, and they've continued to do that even into this runoff. So they have violated in many ways, and if you want to get into social media, which I call socialist media, if you want to get into socialist media, it's even gotten worse than that. They've hidden behind protections that they've been granted by our Congress. They're supposed to be the watchdog so that we don't cross the lines, but they have crossed the line. They inserted themselves in the game. The whole scenario that Senator Cruz, and I respect that, needs to happen. But is there time for that to happen before the joint session of Congress coming up this week? That lays out a different path. If it goes the different path where they will object, is it all just show at that point because the votes are not there, as we've seen it? We talked about this earlier in the news today.
Right. The
votes aren't there for the House and the Senate should they object and they convene for 2 hours and then come back together. It would all have been show and nothing come out of it.
Well, we got more than one option, more than one path. Recently we had Sidney Powell on here, and she laid out several paths to the presidency, returning for President Trump. But it seems to be it's a daily mystery what's really going to happen. Well, I want to introduce Jovan Pulitzer. Now, I did not know Jovan until I saw him last week testify, as many of you did, in the Senate hearings there in the state of Georgia about the machines and how things work. And I thought he did a great job. Welcome, Jovan, to the program tonight. Let's talk about the whole process. Now, I need you to help me simplify this because I need to understand at the most simplest level. Tell me what the deal is with these machines. Then we'll get into the specifics.
I think this, before we get into the machines, it needs to go back to one simple understanding for all viewers that are watching this as Americans. It's ironic that Jon Voight started off, and most of you've seen him in the movie National Treasure. And in National Treasure, when they find that treasure with Nicolas Cage, and there's all those gold and all those things, what was the most important, irreplaceable thing of all? The paper, the Declaration of Independence. Our country was founded on a piece of paper that was authentic and valid and the voice of the people. Your vote is a historical document as well. That piece of paper was generic, then it became. So here's a very simple way to explain how simple these machines can be tricked to do something potentially nefarious. Many of us have had a dollar bill in our life, and we've gone to a soda machine or a snack machine or even a car wash and put the bill in, but the machine spits it back at us. What is that machine saying? That machine saying something doesn't look right. This is not right. And so we do it 2 or 3 more times until we get fed up with it. We fish out a better dollar bill that is correct so the machine can read it and feed it in. Now let's talk about these Dominion machines. The question I have is, in Fulton County, Georgia, let's just use that one, why in an area that is heavily Democrat votes, why is the ballot, the mail-in ballot, 100% on target? And it must be within 1 micron to be read right. Then if you look at a heavy Republican area, why is that mail-in ballot 1,300 times out of calibration? How did it even leave the print factory? The answer is real simple. It's like that dollar bill. You feed it into the machine says, I don't know what's going on here. And it allows a human to intervene, and they get to interpret for you what they feel you really meant. That is not okay.
No, it isn't, absolutely. All right, I want to play this clip, and I saw this today for the first time, about the forensic ballot. I want to play this. This is actually you going through a forensic scan of a ballot and explaining that. I thought this was quite revealing. Watch this.
Absentee and mail-in ballots are folded to mail. Well, if such ballots have no fold marks, were they ever mailed? What you're seeing here is a forensic scan of an actual 2020 ballot. No folds, but when you see the fold, a kinematic artifact is detected. That's where the fold is. It can be seen. Well, if such ballots have no fold marks, were they ever mailed? Forensic science shows if no fold marks, it's not a legal mail-in ballot.
So the fold really does carry a lot of weight, right, Jovan?
Absolutely. These ballots have more than 8 different ways that we can tell, is it an authentic ballot? And in that scenario, if I was sitting with anybody in Georgia in the Election Commission or the Secretary of State, I would say, okay, tell me I'm wrong. Hand me a sheet of paper, fold it, then give it to me. Oh, wait, I want you to take the folds out of it once you folded it. They can't. See, the problem is very simple. If the contested ballots are mail-in ballots, there's a process. What is that process? They must be printed and coded to you and your voting area, immediately put in an envelope and tallied so they know where it's going to go. Well, that's a certified process that sends it out the door. Then it's zipped to you at home. Well, you know what? Somebody's going, hey, pay for this postage. There's a trail. It goes to you at home. You get it. Ostensibly, you open it up. You look at it. You probably didn't vote right then. Maybe you looked at it 2 or 3 times. You filled it out, you put it back in the envelope and went back. The whole time it's going through rollers and presses and rollers and presses. And even if you dropped it off, it goes through the same sign-in process. But all of a sudden we have all these ballots that are perfectly flat. Well, there are reasons you could have a flat ballot. One, my dog ate it. I spilled coffee on it. I didn't know to fill in the circle, and I did a happy face, and it's trying to see what it is. So somebody adjudicates it. That could be its own problem. But if we were to look at San Francisco County in San Francisco, California, out of about 500,000 ballots, they only had about 2,000 of those that really had to have something done to them. So if that's the average, and the average right now in 2016 was 1.2%, and in the 2018 election it was 2.2%, why did Fulton County have almost a 95% adjudication rate? Something's off. something's wrong. And you can tell it really fast if there's just a bunch of flat ballots and it doesn't reconcile with what the post office says and what the state says came back and what the financial remittance is. Well, I say if it's not folded and you can't account for them any other way, it is not a mail-in ballot and it should be disqualified.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So to many of you saw today, of course, we heard in the news about the phone call, President Trump and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and a bunch of attorneys and everything else. And it was kind of got crazy there, blown way out of proportion, and media agencies taking pieces of it out. All right. So what happened today, though, is that we had a response to the phone call, and we also had we're going to play a little clip. I'm not going to bore you with the whole press conference, but I'm going to play this 52-second clip of Gabriel Sterling, the voting systems manager, who basically called you out, Jovan, in this clip. And I want to give you a chance to respond to that. Watch.
Oh, yes. The other really fantastical thing we saw the other day was a potential hacking of Dominion equipment during a Senate hearing last week. That did not happen either. Let's go over a couple of reasons why. First of all, ballot marking devices and scanners, neither one have modems. It's very hard to hack things without modems. There's nothing to talk to. So let's get that clear. The poll pads, which is a no-ink device, does have the ability to connect to Wi-Fi, which we use it for loading purposes and in case there's an issue on election day, but they are not hooked up live all the time. And if they saw anything, they could see traffic back and forth, but it would basically be like watching a river go by. You couldn't get in. It's essentially, if they did this, which we have no proof of. We have claim after claim after claim with zero proof. Zero.
He says zero proof, Jovan. How do you respond to that?
The only river that's flowing is the river that flows from his left ear to his right ear and completely wipes his brain of logic. Please understand, you're asking a guy that could go to prison if he admits this. That's the first failed premise. You're asking the very guy who could go to jail, did this really happen? So let me step back and let me play it to you a few different ways. He says there's no modems on these machines and you can't hack if there's a modem. Did I just not a few minutes ago tell you how to hack it without a modem with just a piece of paper?
Yeah.
That doesn't have to have a modem. Now, why they can say that? Because they're not their machines. They provide the software, the operating system, etc. They make you go buy the machine from somebody else.
All right. Now, wait. Okay, just stop. Put the brakes on. All right. So my lightning fast mind is, wait a minute. You're saying that's not the Dominion, they don't have necessarily a box. It's just you put the software on your machine. You don't know what they have on their machine, correct?
Yes. And let me just give you a few
it's
examples,
that simple. It's really that simple.
It's all smoke and mirrors. I'm sorry, it's all smoke and mirrors, and I'm calling it out. First off, they say these poll pads have no connectivity, or they connect just to look up names. Have you ever noticed when you go to a Starbucks and you sign up for Wi-Fi, or a hotel, you get free Wi-Fi? Have you ever read the EULA, which is the user license agreement you sign? They clearly state this is open for hacking. We cannot control it, but because you can see the connection, you might get things stolen from you, and you have to sign your life away to say, I agree to that. Now, that's just a reversal of this. It means the building, which has an open system in it, and you're connecting to their Wi-Fi, can open it to your data, which is on your phone. We're only talking in reverse. It's not that hard to understand. Once you get inside a building's Wi-Fi, you just keep on hunting for other things that are open. I can show you in international foreign espionage, I can show you where bad actors have taken out an entire power plant, flattened it, blew it up with everybody sitting there just because they could go in through the connected thermostat. Right. There are many ways to hack this system that have nothing to do with Wi-Fi, but if you can see it, you can hack it.
It's good stuff here. I want to play this clip from Eric Coomer, who's the Director of Product and Security for Dominion Voting. This is great. Watch.
What is the vehicle for the transmission from the ICP? Is it cellular modem versus VPN?
Well, it is a cellular modem that can be configured in a VPN, right? And we currently in Chicago, Cook County, we work with Verizon to secure that network. So we would have the same capabilities here.
What wireless chipset / modem does the hardware have?
We support a variety. It's really up to the jurisdictions what technology they want to use, what's compatible with their networks.
Currently, in some jurisdictions, we're using basically a modem that is a 3G modem, GSM, but we can support multiple varieties of modems that can be.
Including latest 4G standards as well.
So that answers the next question. Is it 3G or 4G? Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint? I'm assuming all.
Yeah, all networks. Right. Just
We
as a point of
have
fact,
CDMA,
yeah. I mean, we actually transmit from the ICP in Mongolia as well, so we're not limited in networks.
And in Puerto Rico, there is 3 vendors because the island is not covered by any of the vendors completely. So we use 3 different cellular vendors for some ICPs with this vendor, Claro, AT&T, and T-Mobile, I think, in the different parts of the island. So.
You know, I just really love it when video just backs it all up. There they were with the Dominion Voting logo on the tablecloth saying, oh yeah, we can connect to all these different modems.
I can translate this for America. Ready?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? He's like broadcasting to the world how it's done. But did you catch the smoke and mirrors? He said, well, the actual precincts can decide what hardware they want to use. And he acknowledges it open. He's screaming it. He actually says, and that's the smoke and mirrors when they say there, can't connect to our machines. It's technically correct. It's not their machine. It's the precinct's machine. And if the precinct, which he said, he confirmed, you heard it. Well, if they have that in, they just configure it and it goes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys, let me see. Do I have John Graves yet, gentlemen? All right. I want to